Una stepped off the transport shuttle and felt her stomach drop. The ship was massive. It stretched out before her like a metal mountain floating in space. The ironclad Mercy was not built for comfort. It was built for war. She was 26 years old. She had studied alien cultures for 4 years at the academy. She had learned 6 different languages. She had written papers about first contact situations. But nothing had prepared her for this moment. She was the first human to live aboard a Veldrathi warship. The Veldrathi were waiting for her at the dock. They stood in a line like soldiers. Each one was at least 8 feet tall. Their skin was covered in thick scales that looked like armor. Their eyes were golden and had vertical slits like cats. Their hands ended in claws that could tear through metal. Una was 5 feet 4 inches tall. She had soft brown hair and round eyes. She had no claws, no scales, no natural weapons of any kind. Standing before the Veldrathi, she felt like a small bird surrounded by wolves. A Veldrathi stepped forward. He was older than the others. His scales were dark red, almost the color of dried blood. A long scar ran down the left side of his face. He looked at Una with an expression she could not read. "I am Captain Torvik," he said. His voice was deep and rough. "You are the human observer." "Yes, Captain," Una said. She tried to keep her voice steady. "I am Cultural Liaison Una Park. Thank you for allowing me aboard." Torvik made a sound in his throat. It might have been a laugh. It might have been annoyance. Una could not tell. "The High Command ordered me to accept you," he said. "They believe humans have something to teach us about war." Una nodded. She knew why she was here. 3 months ago, a human ship called the Silver Dawn had faced a fleet of enemy vessels near Epsilon 7. The human ship was small. It was old. It had no chance of winning. But the crew had fought anyway. They had held the line for 6 hours. They had saved an entire colony. The Veldrathi respected strength. They respected warriors. And they could not understand how such small and soft creatures had done what humans did that day. So they had asked for an observer. Someone to study. Someone to explain. That someone was Una. "I will try to be useful," she said. Torvik looked at her for a long moment. Then he turned and walked away. The other Veldrathi followed him. No one offered to carry her bags. No one showed her to her room. She was expected to figure things out on her own. Welcome to the ironclad Mercy. The first week was hard. The ship was designed for Veldrathi bodies. The doors were too tall. The beds were too hard. The food was meat, always meat, cooked in ways that made Una's stomach turn. The lights were dim because Veldrathi eyes were sensitive. The air was warm because Veldrathi were cold-blooded. The crew ignored her. They walked past her in the corridors without a word. They stopped talking when she entered a room. They watched her with those golden eyes like she was a strange insect that had crawled onto their ship. Una tried to observe them. She tried to take notes. She tried to learn their customs and their habits. But it was difficult when no one would speak to her. Then she met the Cubs Dodd. It happened in the mess hall during the 3rd week. Una was sitting alone at a small table, eating a protein bar she had brought from Earth. She heard a sound behind her. When she turned, she saw 6 small faces staring at her. The cubs were children, the sons and daughters of the ship's officers. They lived aboard during long patrol missions because Veldrathi did not leave their young behind. The smallest was about 4 years old in human terms. The oldest was maybe 12. They looked at Una like she was the most interesting thing they had ever seen. "Hello," Una said carefully. The smallest cub stepped forward. She was female, with scales the color of autumn leaves. Her golden eyes were huge and curious. "You are the human," she said. "Yes," Una replied. "My name is Una. What is your name?" "The Gray." The little cub tilted her head. You have no scales. No, humans do not have scales. Your skin is soft, like a worm. Yuna laughed. She could not help it. The cub looked so serious while saying something so funny. Yes, she agreed. Like a worm. The cubs came closer. They gathered around her table. They asked questions. So many questions. Why was her hair like thin grass? Why were her teeth so flat? Why did she not have claws? How did she hunt without claws? Did she ever hunt? Yuna answered every question. She showed them her hands and her feet. She let them touch her hair. She explained that humans used tools because they did not have natural weapons. The eldest cub was a male named Kreth. He was serious and quiet, like his father, who was a weapons officer. He studied Yuna with careful eyes. "You are weak," he said. It was not an insult. It was a fact. "But your people fight well. I have seen the recordings from Epsilon 7. How do you do it?" Yuna thought about the question. She thought about the Silver Dawn. She thought about all the stories she knew about humans facing impossible odds. "We do not think about being weak," she said finally. "We think about what we are protecting. And then we become strong enough to protect it." Kreth considered this. The other cubs were silent. "Strange," he said at last, but he kept coming back. They all did. Every day, the cubs would find Yuna. They would follow her through the corridors. They would sit with her in the mess hall. They would ask her questions and listen to her stories. For the first time since she arrived, Yuna did not feel alone. One evening, Vikra asked Yuna a question that changed everything. They were in the recreation chamber. It was a large empty room where the cubs could run and play. Yuna sat on the floor with the children gathered around her. She had been telling them a story about Earth, about the oceans and the mountains and the billions of people who lived there. Vikra crawled into Yuna's lap. The little cub was warm and heavy, like a small dog made of stone. She looked up at Yuna's face with those big golden eyes. "Why is your face so plain?" Vikra asked. "What do you mean?" Yuna said, "You have no colors. No marks." Vikra touched her own cheek. "When Veldrathi become adults, they get clan marks. Colors that show who they are, who their family is. But you have nothing." Yuna understood. She had noticed the markings on the adult Veldrathi, lines and patterns painted on their scales. Each warrior had different colors, different designs. She had thought they were natural, like birthmarks. Now she realized they were painted on. "Humans do not have clan marks," Yuna explained. "We do not paint our faces like that. Never." Vikra looked disappointed. Yuna paused. That was not exactly true. "Actually," she said slowly, "we do paint our faces sometimes. But not for clans. We do it for other reasons." All 6 cubs leaned forward. Even Kreth, who usually tried to look bored, showed interest. "What reasons?" he asked. "Many reasons. For celebrations. For special events. Sometimes just for fun." "Fun?" The word seemed strange to them. Vikra repeated it, like she was tasting something new. "You paint your face for fun?" "Yes. Would you like me to show you?" The cubs exchanged looks. Yuna could see they were excited but trying to hide it. Veldrathi children were taught to control their emotions from a young age. "We would like to see this," Kreth said formally. "If you do not mind showing us." Yuna smiled. "I do not mind at all." The next day, Yuna went to the medical bay. The ship's doctor was a large female named Thriva. She was less hostile than most of the crew. She had once bandaged Yuna's hand after a door closed on it, and she had been almost gentle. "I need pigments," Yuna said. "Non-toxic colors. For the cubs." Thriva's eyes narrowed. "What do you want to do to the cubs?" "I want to paint their faces. It is a human tradition. Just for fun." The colors will wash off with water. The doctor studied her for a long moment. Then she went to a cabinet and pulled out several containers. Medical pigments meant for marking wounds during surgery. Blues and reds and yellows and whites. If you harm them, I will eat your liver, Thriva said calmly. I will not harm them, Una promised. That evening, she gathered the cubs in the recreation chamber. She spread out the pigments on the floor. The cubs sat in a circle, watching with wide eyes. First, I will show you, Una said. She dipped her finger in the blue pigment. She looked at the children. On Earth, we paint pictures on our faces. Animals, flowers, anything we want. Watch. She began to paint her own face. She drew a butterfly across her cheeks. The wings spread from the center of her nose to her temples. She added small dots of yellow and white for details. When she finished, she turned to show the cubs. They gasped. It is beautiful, Vikra whispered. She reached out and touched the edge of one wing. You have become something else. Now it is your turn, Una said. She started with Vikra. The little cub sat very still, trying hard not to move. Una asked her what she wanted to be. A tiger, Vikra said. I saw a picture. They are from Earth. They have stripes. Una painted orange stripes across Vikra's snout. She added black lines around her eyes. When she finished, Vikra looked like a tiny, fierce beast. Vikra ran to a polished metal panel and stared at her reflection. She opened her mouth and showed her teeth. Then she let out a roar that echoed through the chamber. The other cubs went wild. Me next, shouted one of the twins. I want to be a dragon, said her sister. Kreth stepped forward. His face was serious. I want something powerful, something that will make others fear me. Una thought for a moment. Then she began to paint. She covered half of Kreth's face with dark red pigment. She added black lines like flames. She painted a golden eye on his forehead, staring out at the world. When Kreth saw himself, he stood very still. His chest expanded. He looked older, stronger, more like a warrior than a child. This is good, he said quietly. This is very good. One by one, Una painted them all. The twin sisters got matching flower designs, one in blue and one in purple. Another cub wanted lightning bolts across his cheeks. The last cub, a small shy boy, asked for a skull dot by the time she finished. The recreation chamber was chaos. The cubs chased each other around the room. They roared and screamed. They pretended to fight. Vikra the tiger attacked Kreth the dragon. The flower sisters danced in circles. The lightning boy shot imaginary bolts from his hands. The skull boy crept along the walls like a ghost. Una sat in the middle of it all and laughed. She could not remember the last time she had been this happy. These children, these fierce little warriors, were playing like children everywhere. Like human children at a birthday party. Like her own nieces and nephews back on Earth. For a moment, the war and the fear and the loneliness all went away. What Una did not see was the figure standing in the shadows. Near the door, Captain Torvak watched the scene in silence. His scarred face showed no expression. He watched the cubs run and play. He watched the colors on their faces. He watched the human woman laugh. Then he turned and walked away without a sound. He had much to think about. Captain Torvak sat alone in his quarters. The lights were dim. The only sound was the hum of the ship's engines. On the screen before him, images and text scrolled past. He was studying humans. For 3 hours, he had been reading everything in the ship's database about human history, about human warfare, about human traditions. He had looked at thousands of pictures. He had read hundreds of reports. Now he understood what the human woman was doing. At first, he had thought she was weak. She was small and soft. She had no claws or fangs. She walked through his ship like a lost child, trying to find her place among warriors. He had felt something close to pity for her, but he had been wrong. Torvak pulled up an image on his screen. It showed human warriors from long ago. They were standing in a group before a battle. Their faces were covered in paint. Red and black lines crossed their cheeks. Symbols decorated their foreheads. They looked like something from nightmares. He found more images. Humans from different lands and different times, all painting their faces before war. Some used mud and ash. Some used blood. Some used bright colors that made them look like demons. Every culture did it. Every group of human warriors, no matter where they came from, painted themselves before they fought. Why? Torvak needed to understand. He found a human document about the practice. It explained that face paint served many purposes. It scared enemies. It showed which side a warrior belonged to. It changed how a person felt inside. When humans painted their faces, they stopped being ordinary people. They became something else, something stronger, something without fear. The document used a word that Torvak did not fully understand: psychological warfare. Fighting not just with weapons, but with the mind. Making the enemy afraid before the battle even began. Torvak leaned back in his chair. His claws tapped against the armrest. He thought about the cubs. He thought about the designs on their faces. The tiger, the dragon, the skull, the lightning. These were not random pictures. These were symbols of power. Predators and death and elemental force. The human woman had not been playing with the children. She had been training them. Torvak called up footage from the Battle of Epsilon 7. He had watched it many times before. The human ship, small and damaged, holding the line against a fleet. The human crew, tired and wounded, refusing to give up. This time, he looked more carefully at their faces. The human captain was a woman named Hana. She was young, even by human standards. She should have been terrified. Her ship was falling apart around her. Her crew was dying. There was no way to win. But when Torvak looked at her face, he saw no fear. He saw 3 dark lines under each of her eyes. He saw smears of grease and soot arranged in patterns. She had painted herself. In the middle of a battle, with death coming, she had taken time to mark her face. Her crew had the same marks. Torvak zoomed in on the footage. He studied each human face. They all had the lines. 3 marks under each eye, a symbol that connected them, that made them one. They had fought like a single beast with many bodies. They had moved together. They had died together. And in the end, they had won together, because of paint on their faces. Torvak felt something he had not felt in many years. It took him a moment to recognize it. It was respect. True respect, not the polite kind he showed to other captains or to high command. This was the respect one warrior gave to another. Humans were not weak. They were different. They had found ways to make themselves strong that Veldrathi had never imagined. They did not change their bodies. They changed their minds. They painted pictures on their skin and became the pictures. And now their human woman was teaching this secret to Veldrathi cubs. Torvak thought about his own children. He had a son and a daughter, both grown now, both serving on other ships. He had taught them to fight with weapons. He had taught them to be strong in body. But he had never thought to make them strong in spirit the way humans did. Perhaps this was why humans won battles they should have lost. Perhaps this was the answer High Command was looking for. Torvak closed the files on his screen. He sat in the dark for a long time, thinking. The human woman believed she was only playing with children. She did not understand what she was really doing. She did not see how important it was. To her, face paint was simple fun, something light and foolish. But to the cubs, it might be something more. It might be the beginning of a new kind of strength. Torvak made a decision. He would not stop her. He would not interfere. He would watch and wait and see what happened. And when the time came, he would make sure everyone understood what the human had given them. For now, he would say nothing. He stood up and walked to the viewport. Outside, the stars stretched out forever. Somewhere out there, enemies were waiting. The Krethian raiders who had been attacking Veldrothi colonies. The slavers and pirates who fed on the weak. Soon, the ironclad Mercy would find them. Soon, there would be battle. And when that day came, Torvik would see what face paint could really do. He looked at his own reflection in the dark glass, his scarred face, his tired eyes. He wondered what design the human woman would paint for him if he asked. Something fierce, he decided. Something that would make his enemies remember his face in their nightmares. He almost smiled. Almost. The alarm came at midnight. Yun awoke to the sound of sirens and the flash of red lights. For a moment, she did not know where she was. Then she remembered. The ironclad Mercy, the Veldrothi ship. Thousands of light years from Earth. A voice came through the speakers. It was Captain Torvik. All crew to battle stations. Krethian raiders have been spotted near Vithas Prime. We moved to intercept in 6 hours. Yuna's heart began to pound. She had known this day would come. She had trained for it. But nothing could prepare her for the cold fear that filled her chest. The next hours were chaos. The ship came alive like a sleeping beast waking up. Warriors ran through the corridors. Weapons were loaded. Armor was checked. The sounds of metal and voices filled every space. Yun had tried to stay out of the way. She was not a soldier. She had no place in the battle. Her job was to observe and survive, but she could not stop thinking about the cubs. She found them in the inner chamber. This was the safest part of the ship, deep inside where enemy weapons could not easily reach. The 6 children sat together in a corner. Their scales were pale. Their eyes were wide with fear. When they saw Yuna, they ran to her. Vikra grabbed her leg and held on tight. The little cub was shaking. Yuna picked her up and held her close. "I am scared," Vikra whispered. "I know," Yuna said. "I am scared too." Kreth stood apart from the others. He was trying to be brave. He was trying to look strong like his father. But Yuna could see his hands trembling. "Our parents will fight," he said. His voice cracked a little. "They might not come back." The other cubs began to cry. Soft sounds of fear and grief. They were just children. They should not have to feel this way. They should not have to know that death was waiting just hours away. Yuna sat down on the floor. She gathered all 6 cubs around her. She held them close. She let them cry. "Listen to me," she said quietly. "Your parents are strong. They are the best warriors in the fleet. They will fight, and they will win, and they will come back to you. You do not know that," Kreth said. "No," Yuna admitted. "I do not know for certain, but I believe it. And sometimes believing is enough." They sat in silence for a while. The sounds of the ship preparing for war echoed around them. Footsteps and shouts and the hum of weapons charging. Then Kreth spoke. "Yuna," he said, "will you paint us?" She looked at him. His face was serious. His golden eyes burned with something fierce. "Paint you?" she asked. "Like before, with the colors. But this time, paint us like warriors." He lifted his chin. "I want my father to see me before he goes to battle. I want him to see that I am not afraid, that I am his son." The other cubs nodded. Even little Vikra stopped crying. "Please," she said, "make us strong." Yuna hesitated. This was different from before. This was not a game. This was real. The fear was real. The danger was real. The children were asking her for something that might be the last thing their parents ever saw. Could she do it? She looked at their faces. 6 children. scared and brave at the same time. 6 young hearts that needed something to hold on to. Yes, she could do it. "All right," she said. "But this time, you tell me what you want to become. This time, you choose." She found her pigments where she had left them in the recreation chamber. She brought them back to the inner room. The cubs waited in silence. Vikra went first. She climbed into Yuna's lap and closed her eyes. "I want to be a Vethkral," she said. Yuna did not know what that was. Kreth explained. The Vethkral was a legendary beast from HFY Stories. A creature of war and fire that protected young ones from harm. Yuna painted it as best she could. A fierce face with sharp lines. Colors of red and orange like flames. When she finished, Vikra looked at herself and smiled. "I am strong now," she said. Kreth came next. He wanted his father's clan symbol, but bigger, bolder, a design that covered his whole face like armor. "My father will see this," he said as Yuna painted. "He will know I carry his honor." The twins wanted fire and ice. One face blazing with reds and oranges. The other cold with blues and whites. Sisters who were opposite but together. The shy boy wanted something gentle this time. "A shield," he said. "Something to protect." The last cub wanted lightning again. Power from the sky. When Yuna finished painting them all, she stopped. She looked at each face. 6 young warriors, painted and proud. Something was missing. She dipped her finger in the black pigment. She went to each cub, one by one. Under their eyes, she drew 3 small lines. "What are these?" Vikra asked. Yuna thought about Hannah, the captain of the Silver Dawn. She thought about the marks she had seen in the battle footage. She thought about what those marks might mean. "They mean you are not alone," Yuna said. "They mean you are part of something bigger. They mean you have pack." Kreth touched the lines on his face. His eyes were bright, like human warriors, he said. "Yes," Yuna replied. "Like human warriors." The cubs stood together. They looked at each other. They looked at their painted faces and their matching marks. For the first time since the alarm sounded, they were not afraid. They were ready. The warriors gathered in the main hall before the battle. Yuna watched from the shadows as hundreds of Veldrathi assembled. They wore armor of black metal. They carried weapons that hummed with deadly energy. Their scales gleamed under the harsh lights. They were ready to kill or die for their people. Captain Torvak stood at the front. His voice echoed through the hall as he spoke of duty and honor and victory. The warriors listened in silence. Their eyes burned with the fire of coming war. Then the doors opened. The cubs walked in. Every head turned. Every warrior went still. 6 small figures moved through the crowd. Their painted faces shone with color. Tigers and dragons and flames and ice. And under each pair of golden eyes, 3 dark lines. Vikra found her mother near the front. The female warrior dropped to her knees and stared at her daughter. "What is this?" she whispered. "I am a Vethkral now," Vikra said. Her small voice was steady. "I will protect you while you are gone. I will guard the ship. I will be fierce." The mother touched her daughter's painted face. Her claws trembled. Kreth walked to his father. The weapons officer looked down at his son. He saw his own clan symbol, huge and bold, covering the boy's face. "I carry your honor," Kreth said. "Fight well, father. Come home to me." The father could not speak. He pulled his son close and held him tight. All around the hall, the same scene repeated. Cubs finding their parents. Painted faces lifted with pride. Words of courage and love passing between them. Yuna watched it all with tears in her eyes. Captain Torvak moved through the crowd toward her. His face was hard to read. She could not tell if he was angry or pleased or something else entirely. "Come with me," he said. She followed him out of the hall and down a corridor. They walked to the observation deck. The great windows showed the stars outside and the distant shape of enemy ships waiting. Torvak stood beside her in silence for a long moment. "You have trained my cubs well," he said finally. Yuna blinked. "Sir, I did not train them. I was just playing. Face paint is something human children do for fun. At parties, at games. It does not mean anything serious." Torvak turned to look at her. His golden eyes were sharp. "I have studied your people," he said. "I have read your histories. Your warriors have painted their faces for thousands of years, before every great battle. In every war, the practice is ancient and powerful." Yuna opened her mouth to argue, to explain that she had learned face painting at summer camp when she was 9 years old, that she had painted butterflies and rainbows and silly cartoon characters, that humans painted their faces to cheer for sports teams and go to music concerts. But she stopped. She looked at the captain. She saw something in his eyes that surprised her. It was hope, real hope, burning bright. He believed in this. He believed that human face paint was a sacred tradition, a ritual of power, a way to make warriors stronger. And maybe he was not entirely wrong. Maybe it did not matter where the tradition came from. Maybe what mattered was what it meant to the people who used it. The cubs believed they were warriors now. The parents believed their children were protected by ancient human magic. And belief was powerful. "The marks mean something else too, Captain," Yuna said quietly. He waited. "They mean the children are not afraid. They mean that even the smallest of your people is ready to fight. They mean that when the battle is over, you will come home to faces bright with color and joy." Torvak was silent for a long moment. "This is a human tradition?" he asked. "To paint the young so the old fight harder?" Yuna thought about this. She thought about parents back on Earth who worked long hours so their children could have better lives. She thought about soldiers who carried pictures of their families into battle. She thought about all the ways humans found strength in the people they loved. Humans have learned that the greatest warriors are those who have something beautiful to come home to, she said. The captain straightened. His scarred face shifted. For the first time since Yuna had boarded his ship, he looked at her with true respect, not as a curiosity, not as a strange little creature to be studied, but as a fellow warrior who understood what mattered. "Then we are not so different," he said. "Your people understand what many species forget. War is not only about killing, it is about what we protect." He turned to leave, then he stopped. "After the battle," he said, "you will teach me this face painting." Yuna raised an eyebrow. "What design would you want?" Torvak's face changed. The corners of his mouth turned up slightly. It was the closest thing to a smile his species could make. "Something that will make my cubs laugh," he said. Then he walked away to lead his warriors into battle. Yuna stood alone at the window. She watched the stars. She thought about the strange path that had led her here. A human woman on an alien warship, teaching children to paint their faces. She had come to study warriors. Instead, she had taught them something about joy, about play, about love. Maybe that was the real secret of humanity. Not their weapons or their tactics or their stubbornness in battle, but the small things, the silly things. The painted faces and the laughter and the bright colors that said life is beautiful and worth fighting for. The Veldrathi would win today. Yuna knew it in her heart that they would fight like demons. They would tear their enemies apart. And when the battle was over, they would come home to painted children who roared like tigers and dragons. They would come home to something beautiful. And that was worth more than any weapon ever made. Far away, the battle began. Lights flashed in the darkness. Ships collided. Warriors screamed their war cries. But in the safe heart of the ironclad Mercy, 6 painted cubs sat together and waited. They were not afraid. They knew their parents would come home. Humans had taught them to believe.